Welcome back to the channel. Today we get to discuss chassis stiffening to fix chassis twist. And this is relative to any body-on frame classic car. That would be a GM A body, G body, C10 trucks, Tri-Five Chevys. There may be more. Leave a comment below if there are more that I missed out. But we're going to discuss what chassis twist is, why it happens, why you might want to fix it by stiffening, and most importantly, how to fix it. And this is going to be a very unique video. I've not seen it done online yet. Hang out with me for a minute. I'll explain why this is going to be different. But let's first talk about what chassis twist is. And this is a well-known problem within the drag racing community because those engines are super hopped up. And the first thing to go is the chassis because you can see a twist. And I did a drag racing event a couple months ago, and you can see from this clip, the front end of the car is actually twisting a little bit. You guys see that? Yeah, that's from the torque of the engine. The torque, my engine has 600 pound-feet of torque, double the factory spec. So that's going to give a little. Now, the reason that happens is those frames on those cars were built with what's called the C channel. As you can see right here, here's my frame, there's a C channel, and that allows the car to twist. And I think it was done on purpose because back in the day, they wanted really comfy rides, like Cadillac style. But those of us that want to stiffen up our rides and for max performance, we need to fix that. So how do you fix it? That's another great question. The biggest challenge with fixing that is it typically has to be done early on in your project and depending on your budget. So the body's off the frame. You typically want to what's called box in those rails. So you box in that rail, that stiffens up those C channels, and it's a massive improvement. So the ultimate solution is to go to like Art Morrison or the Roadster Shop and drop 25 grand and get a new chassis, which is built exactly to that spec, all squared in rails, front to rear. But I didn't have that kind of deep pockets when I started my project. Plan B to that is right here. There it is. Yep. Got it. Summit Racing. They have all the models covered. I like this one the most because of this rear piece. Look at that thing. Isn't that sick? Yeah. So there's a couple different manufacturers, but that's why I picked this one. Guys, eyes up here. Stop looking at my junk on the table. Now, what makes this unique? Any of these kits that have the full boxing in the rail kit, as well as the mid supports with transmission brace, has to be done with the body off, welded in with the body off. Well, 90% of us, including myself, have the body on, and I have no intention of taking the body off because my panels are lined up perfectly. So if you're like me, you want to increase your chassis stiffness, we're going to go through this in true Fast Monty's Garage style, where I've never done it before, and it should give you guys some tips and tricks on doing it on your car with your body on. So before we get going here, I want to show you a couple of new tools I got that I'm also excited to play with. All right, tool number one. I've always wanted a plasma cutter. Those of you guys following the channel know that I have a Miller TIG welder. I wanted to get a Miller plasma cutter, but those things are expensive. I was saving my money. I call it $2 grand budget. I came across this company called Yes Welder, and they have several different plasma cutters to choose from. This is a mid-range product. It's around 500 bucks. I can't wait to use it. There will be cutting going on. And quite frankly, I think my belt top bandsaw ain't gonna cut it, if you know what I mean. So I can't wait to give this a shot. Not mandatory though. You can get away with using a cutoff wheel, which I might have to use anyway. But when I get to it, I get to it. After we're done with this whole playlist, I will be doing a full review of this product because there's going to be some learning curve, right? So we'll see how it goes. Now, the next product though is mandatory. Check this out. Yeah, got a MIG welder, baby. Can you guys believe it that this whole time on the channel, I don't have a MIG welder in my arsenal? Oh my God. So remember, I had a $2,000 budget. $500 went for the plasma cutter. I had money left over because if I don't spend that money, my wife's going to spend the money. So it's much better served here. So I found this one on Yes Welder's website, and it's one of their mid-range products as well. It was around 800 bucks, 850, but it can do 5 different types of welding. MIG with gas or without, lift TIG they call it, stick welding, and it's spool gun compatible, which means you can MIG weld aluminum. Now this a MIG welder is mandatory for this project because we're going to be welding in tight quarters. It's going to help with tack welding when we go to mock up. So I still can't believe I never had a MIG welder this whole time during this whole project. So I'm excited. And in this process, I was able to get you guys a 10% discount code. So go hit up the link below to their website. Check it out. They got a ton of different products to choose from and a discount code as well to get you 10% off. Have fun shopping. Now, the next step here before we mock everything up, I want to get a before measurement. Let's see how well chassis stiffening actually does. So I'm going to take the GTO Optolift, put it over here, and I'm going to crank up one corner of the car and take some measurements. Let's get to it. So here's what I had in mind. Jack up the front of the car and measure the frame at the rear wheel. So to make sure this is scientific, all the tires are at 33 psi, and I have a professional feeler gauge. Yeah, it's professional. So I know that if I can rotate the front tire and the feeler gauge can barely squeak through, that's the front height. So I also marked right in front of the jack, and I took a measurement there just to duplication of efforts. But let's go ahead and measure the rear before stiffening. Okay, here's the rear, and mental note, can't see under the tire. Tire's still touching the ground. And I put a mark on the frame. This mark is never going to move throughout the whole process. So I'm measuring to the bottom of that horizontal mark. We have an 8 and an 1/8. So 8 and an 1/8. That's our starting point. Let's throw this baby back on the lift. All right, car's back on the lift. And yes, I highly recommend a lift. If you're doing this project or not, if you have a classic car, get one, because I can actually store the car out of the way so my son can't accidentally run into it with his bike. Anyway, get the car high enough off the ground as possible and make sure you keep the suspension loaded. So I needed more height between the frame and my lift so I can get in there and work. So I got some race ramps. Those are 4-inch race ramps, front and rear. Again, the suspension is fully loaded. So when we're taking apart, taking the transmission brace out, etc., everything stays static as if we were driving the car. So when we weld everything in, it will also remain in that position. That's key. So let's get under the car and show you what we have to get out of here. Okay, first things first, we have to take the X pipe out and my brand new G-Force transmission brace. So if this project goes according to plan, let me know who wants to buy the G-Force brace, because I won't need it anymore. You'll see why later in the series. So I'm gonna get to work, get this out of here, and I'll show you some tips and tricks I use for the X pipe to get it out easy. I got the X pipe out. It actually takes me less than 5 minutes, and I realized I have 3 different videos on this subject. If you have an X pipe that's a slip fit system, it's a pain in the ass to get those out. So on the header side, I did a video, I'll have a link below, but I have these low profile band clamps from Ultimate Headers. So there's an interior sleeve, which is precision machined, and then there's a clamp. So then there's the mating side from the exhaust, and then you clamp it, and that's the profile of the clamp. Yeah, no flange. Pretty awesome, especially if you have a lowered car. Now, let me flip this over. The muffler side, I put on band clamps. So there's one on the muffler inlet, and then this is the back of the pipe, and then the band clamp goes over it. Super tight fit. I did a video on that too, so there's a link below. And if you notice right here, cutouts is the 3rd video I did. So again, links are below if you guys need a refresher, or if you're new to the channel, check them out. Might give you some ideas. Okay, now it's time for that damn transmission brace, which I'm still thinking, I don't know how I'm gonna keep the transmission up there during this whole project. We'll see. I got the G-Force brace out. Man, just when I was falling in love with it too. Sorry, honey, you gotta go. So this is basically how it will look in the car. And granted, there's a big challenge ahead of us because we have to start with the side rails. The side rail plates come with these guys. You can tell one end is fatter than the other. The fatter one actually goes towards the front, just in case you were wondering. And in order to do this methodically, I still need to verify that this is going to work at all. And the easiest way to do that is to tackle the passenger side of the car, because as you guys know, the driver's side of the car has a brake line, fuel line, and your parking brake, which all need to be removed and then reinstalled. So if I prove that we can't do this on the passenger side, then that saves me all that time on the driver's side. So let's jump onto the car. I want to show you the first challenge we have with adjusting our frame rails. Before we look at the channels up close, I want to show you how barren it is. There's like no support in the middle of the car between the engine supports way up there and basically the rear axle. So if we take that brace out, and the brace does nothing as far as torsion goes, we only have these two side C channels to support all that torque. So that explains a lot, and it looks empty, doesn't it? It's crazy. So let me show you a close-up view of the side channels that we have to fix before we get going. So here's the issue that I can guarantee that all of us have because our frames are 50 years old. They were neglected. And what I mean by that is, you guys see how this bends up? That is not supposed to be bent up. This is supposed to be parallel with this top edge. The reason this is bent up because some idiot put this car on a lift and guaranteed they put your car on a lift the wrong way, and the lift arms bent the frame up. Oh yeah, so we need to use the side plate as a template just for the width. We need to bend this to match. So I gotta get creative. I'm gonna probably use a crescent wrench and just start going to town on making this bottom edge as close to parallel as this top edge, using my side plate as a guide. Yeah, looks like a lot of work. I got a little update for you. So I was able to use my crescent wrench, bend that down to get this to an even 2 7/8, which is my measurement, which is fantastic. Now before I make that permanent, I wanted to go ahead and mock up the frame rail, the new frame rail, and I use my little clamps, it's holding it up. But the front and rear has these little L brackets. You can push it right up against the existing frame. So it fits nice here. There is those stamped holes for drainage at the factory when they coat the bodies. I did have to shave the front end of it off to get this to sit flush with the body. Now moving forward, the gap between the body and the new frame starts to increase. So right here I can put my pinky, there's a hole that you're actually supposed to drill through the body and bolt it to the body. I can get my pinky in there, and let's go all the way to the front. So all the way at the front, I can get my full finger in between the body and the new frame. The issue is right here. This is also an L bracket pushed up against the frame. So that means I need to cut that bracket off. Break out the plasma cutter! Okay, it's my first time cutting this material, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna try a little corner of the tab, because we're gonna cut this piece off. I just wanna test my settings. Yeah, it's my second time using this thing. I did a test fire on some thinner material, and this is a little thicker, so we'll see what happens. Bump it up to 40. I'm using 220 volts. This is 40 amps. Here we go. Hell yeah. That was like butter. I just missed the very beginning. I just went too fast. Awesome. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guard off. You're not really supposed to touch the metal, but that's a great way to stay in that corner. So no guard, practice run. Should go just fine. Here we go. Fire in the hole. Oh, you gotta love that. That was sweet. Let's go put this back in the car. I'm getting excited. Oh yeah, look how much more room we got there. I was able to get it all the way up to the body, and it looks awesome. The next step here is I need to trim a little bit off this pipe because it's interfering with the frame, because I still can get some more room here to push the flange back more against the existing frame bracket on the frame. But man, it's coming together. The other thing to note, there's a hole in the bottom. Once I get that trimmed, I'm gonna go ahead and drill a hole, and we'll use a fastener to keep that locked in. And that reminds me, maybe we could do it in the front. Yeah, so in the front, I'm gonna make a hole right here, and then I can bolt it to the frame so we can temporarily mock it up. Maybe even use the plasma cutter to make a slot. Oh man, I love when ideas start flowing. Here's the back side of that front flange where I already drilled a hole, and I'm planning on using these little self-tapping screws. You guys have seen these if you're used to A-bodies. They're all over our cars. So that fits in just fine. It would actually come this way. Don't freak out, guys, but there's some room to play in there, which is great. So I want to make that a slot, so we have some room to move this around, find a final position, and then when the time comes, we can tack it in. Now, making a slot is not as easy as it sounds. You'd have to get like a die grinder and grind that out, which is never fun. So we're gonna have fun this time because we're gonna use the plasma cutter. Now on my sample pieces that I was playing with earlier, the plasma cutter leaves about a 16th inch gap. So I'm gonna come up with a way to make some straight lines. I could do it freehand if my balls were big enough, but they're not. So let me come up with a solution here. Here's what I came up with. I have a piece of angle iron, well, angle aluminum, and there's a little guard on the Yes Welder plasma cutter where I can just slide right along and make a nice straight cut, in theory. So here we go. God hates a coward. Ha! Pretty cool. I mean, that happened real quick. So I'm gonna go ahead and go that way with it, and then realign this so I'm cutting the top line, and then I'll manually cut the verticals. Oh yeah, the world's fastest slot. That was awesome. My first time doing that. The only thing I would do differently is just to maintain angle, but wow, I love it. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up the back side because there's a little bit of slag on the back. So just take my grinding disc, throw it back in the car, see how it looks. And there she is, look. We can move it up and down a little bit. We can twist it, which is gonna be ideal when we get to final mock-up, but hell yeah, got the slot. Now let's talk about the rear flange because we have another challenge ahead of us. All right, I realize it's tough to see, but as you notice, the flange height is taller than the bracket on the frame. Well, this is all fine and dandy if you're doing with the body off and you're welding down, but we're not welding down. We have to weld this way. So I have to trim this flange to match the profile of the bracket. That is the challenge. When we get to this side, it has to just round down a little bit, and then we can easily weld this corner, and we can easily weld around the bottom of the bracket. I can show you that later, but that's the mission. So I'm gonna try and draw a line on the back side of this. If I can't, I have to come up with another way to trim that down. All right, guys, what I was able to do was use the end of my calipers to figure out the height difference from the flange on the frame to this top edge here. And what you do is you take this end, the business end of your calipers, and spray some paint on there that can scratch off. This is Toolmaker dye, and I didn't clean it first, so it didn't stick right there. But what you do is you take the business end and you just scrape along that top edge using that top edge as a reference. Like that, you guys see that line? Bam, so you can actually trace that whole pattern like that. And now I'll do the same trick we learned with the plasma cutter, and I measured on the previous cut where this should be in relative to that edge, and it happens to be 550 thousandths. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this up to cut this top edge, then I'll cut probably the bottom edge and then tilt it like this and cut that remaining piece. Okay, there we go. Then you can check the other end, 550, so it's right to that cut mark. And what, in all honesty, I'm gonna do just a short cut here just to make sure I did measure it correctly from the first time, and we'll see how it goes. All right guys, I tried cutting from this side because I don't need that material, and I'm 50 thousandths low. So I'm gonna readjust and then give it a whirl. Sorry guys, sorry the camera was off, but the magic measurement is 475. So that's cool, at least we nailed that down. Oh yeah. Pretty good for an amateur. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the car as is, because if I have to do final grinding, there's no sense in cleaning this up now. So let's go mock it up. Oh yeah, look at that. I just have to do a minor bit of sanding right there, some 80 grit on my flat disc wheel, and we can get that to fit, because I'm gonna bend these flanges a little bit inward so they're flush with the frame, and then we can weld right along that seam. That is pretty awesome. Wow, we made quick work of that, didn't we? But now that we've done that, we got to do the same thing to the front. I'm going to show you really quick what I'm talking about. I'm not going to film it, don't worry. So same treatment on this side. If you notice, this is the frame actually comes up right behind the flange. Well, I can't weld from this angle, so I'm going to take some material off the flange, probably to right there, just to say a ½ inch. Same with the back side, I can feel it, and then just come over like that, and then we have to bend these tabs down, and that'll be ready to weld this side. Mock-up is complete. Look at this thing. I added a bolt right there. Perfect clearance all the way around for welding. I know I can get the torch in there, and I'll probably just push this back a ½ inch when we get to it, but this looks great. Let me show you the front. There's the front. I cut the top off. You can see frame here, so we can get a torch in there, I think, and we still have to bend these to match the contour. We'll cover that in a later episode. We have a trick for that, but man, this looks awesome. Oh my God, are you guys getting excited yet or what? I mean, look at how sturdy this is, and there's only 2 bolts in there. Wow, I can't wait. So we learned a couple things this episode. One, and most importantly, Mike now loves plasma cutting. Wow, that thing cuts like butter. Oh, wow, and I have to look around the shop to see what else I can cut up. So if you guys don't have a plasma cutter, I highly recommend that unit from Yes Welder. The other thing we learned is that confidence level is through the roof. Remember, I wanted to mock this up before we made the C channels permanently boxed in. So next episode, we're gonna get to that, but we have to tackle the driver's side first. And doing the same thing, mocking up the driver's side. I'm not gonna film cutting this thing up on the driver's side, but what we do have to discuss are the brake lines, the fuel line. We have to relocate those or temporarily remove them. And third, I think we have to do something about the parking brake cable. I think that is interfering with the front brace. We don't know yet until I mock that up. Assuming that goes well, and we mock up both frame rails, and I can test drive shaft clearance and exhaust clearance, and we're all good on those measures, because I still don't know for sure, then, and only then, can we discuss boxing in the frame. So hopefully we do all that next episode. So if you're not subscribed, do so. But until next time, you guys know the drill. Build them fast, drive them faster. See ya. Pull-up time. 1, 2. Just kidding.